Hey, you guys.
Yo, how are you?
Doing all right.
Good, good, good.
How you doing, James? It's Ian, bro.
Yeah. How you going?
Good, man. How's your day been?
Busy.
Yeah.
We've got so our main office for the company I work for is in Orlando, so they're kind of prepping for this hurricane coming through.
Oh,
yeah,
Last
man.
time we talked, we had a hurricane coming at us.
Right.
Now my company's home office is down there, which I mean everything's like cloud based now, so
Yeah.
there's not really anything, other than just I'm going to have some employees without power, probably after tomorrow night. So
That's going to be rough.
Yeah, the back-to-back has just been nuts.
oh yeah,
You skated through it okay, though, on your side?
we got very lucky. There was a last, as it made landfall in Florida, it moved like 10 or 20 miles, to the west,
Okay.
which by the time it got where we are, it actually missed us by one county.
Wow.
So the worst of the storm ended up being to our west, about, 40, 50 miles. It's pretty
Damn.
wild.
Yeah. I mean, that's actually pretty close.
Yeah, that's way
Really?
close.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it was a little dicey because I got a lot of pine trees and stuff. I was more worried about maybe than even I realized until about a few hours before the storm. And I got a guy coming now to look at cutting a bunch of them down because they're really close to my house.
Yep,
Yeah,
that's
no
smart, man.
No doubt. I would be looking at the same thing if we got that kind of weather here, because I've got big trees next to my house. Okay. Thanks, everybody, for listening to Untitled Car Project. I'm Rob Spring. I'm here with Ian Fike.
Hello.
James Schoepf of High Octane Dads. This is a special episode. We're going to do it about some drifting, I think, is what we're going to talk about tonight. Guys, thanks for coming. Thanks for being on the line. James.
Absolutely.
Not really sure, because, well, I did do a little bit of research on this, because, James, when you reached out to me, I was like, that's a great idea. I don't know what I'm talking about drifting. So we're gonna call Ian the expert tonight. He's our expert drifter, and we're just going to pepper him with questions.
Yeah, I'm good with that. I'd love to talk to you guys about drifting.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
I know, James, you had a great experience at LS Fest with drifting, and you got to be out in the center circle and that kind of stuff. I think you probably, you're more well-versed than I am, because what I see social media and people drifting and that kind of stuff, which I did see one today, Ian, that I wanted to ask you about.
Okay.
Maybe we'll just lead with that. So I saw, I think maybe it's a Gymkhana drift. So
Yes.
they've got barrels and obstacles out on a drift course, and you have to drift in between them around like figure eights and this and that. And at one point he actually drifted into a parking spot, which he freaking nailed it. I thought it was cool.
Yeah, that would be considered a grid or a Gymkhana. Yeah.
Okay.
That type of style is generally done solo, and so it's based on, individual run as opposed to most competitions, which are tandem or team, which is like, 3 or 4 or 5 cars in a train, essentially.
Yeah.
But Gymkhana's cool. There used to be a show called Gymkhana Grid back in the late aughts that was very, very awesome, and they only did like 2 seasons.
Okay.
But it was awesome. But that kind of put that style on the a map for America. That style has been happening in Japan forever. All of drifting has been happening in Japan and Asia for much, much longer than here, and Russia.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We kind of got late on the whole thing where people were like stoked on it and really started doing it. But it's Gymkhana's and any grid is always exciting to watch. I think so.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty cool. James, have you seen that, the Gymkhana style event?
Yeah, for sure. I think, my exposure to it's more like the Ken Block stuff and all, which is obviously, he's a big name with that. And I think I mentioned Top Gear last time, but they had some stuff where, he went over and I'm trying to remember who he had in the car with him, but he was drifting all around, Buckingham Palace and stuff.
Damn.
It was pretty cool to watch. But yeah, I've seen the competitions and much like even the tandem stuff is like how they score that or decide a winner, is very interesting to me.
Yeah, and that's generally the main style, tandem, head to head, or whatever people want to call it.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty cool. So, in the Gymkhana style or grid or whatever you want to call it, how do they score something like that?
Well, it's all based on it's similar to tandem. I mean, it's generally clipping points. So how far you have the nose into, they set a clipping point, right? So the lead of your car, which line you take it to get the nose of your car closest to that clipping point.
Okay.
And then the line you take going into the next corner, how smooth you transition in the next corner, and the line you take going into the next clipping point.
Oh, wow.
And then, other things like style or angle. Mm-hmm. Angle's big. Like how much angle can you get while still hitting those clipping points? And also, in tandems, it's the lead car sets the line. The chase car has to mimic it and stay as close to that car as he possibly can.
Oh, okay.
And so that's how you get points on a chase run.
Little follow the leader action.
Yeah, big time. And it's like, when you see them transition, like if you're on his door, you barely brake and you just on his other door.
Oh, wow.
As he, as the transition comes.
Yeah. I was expecting to run into each other when they're changing directions like that. They're so close.
They are very close. Yeah, it's hard to do. Yeah. I do it with my buddies, but I'm nowhere near like a pro. Yeah. But it's fun.
Yeah.
It's fun to try. It's dangerous for your car.
Yeah, dangerous on the equipment.
Yeah.
James, what I know that you were, being out in the middle of the competition, like what was that like? And from that view, I can't even imagine everybody being around you like that. Does that feel a little intense?
It definitely was. There was a period where I was shooting a lot of the drag racing, and they were, getting ready to start up, and I was like, maybe I won't get out in the middle. I can shoot from the edge like I did the year prior, and still make it back over to the drag lanes and take some pictures there. And I was like, I'm not going to forgive myself if I go home and don't go out there and get some photos. And it was definitely not the adrenaline rush of being in the car, I'm certain, but it was a lot of fun being there and trying to capture it and being that close, and seeing, like you were talking about with them being like almost door to door coming all the way around you. It was pretty awesome.
Yeah, no doubt. I've noticed, I pulled up, trying to do a little research and that kind of stuff, the different kinds of competitions. You mentioned grid, you've got tandem. What other kind of, the tandem I've seen is mostly just in a oval, or maybe they've got a slight variation to that where they have a little bit of a left, right.
Yeah, generally, most of the time it's at a track, and then they just set up a line that is used for that competition. Like, they do it up in Seattle at Evergreen.
Yeah.
They do it in Long Beach, which is on a street setup, which is sweet.
Street circuit.
Yep, it's a circuit they set up. And then, Atlanta's a big one. And I'm talking Formula Drift, which is like the biggest one in the U.S.
Oh, okay.
Formula Drift is like the major league series here in the U.S. And there's a ton of other ones. Like, there's so many grassroots drift events. And Matsuris, which is a weekend event.
Right.
And then, there's competitions, and then there's just, having fun. It's just endless out there of the things. But as far as Formula Drift goes, it's basically they set a line based on, it's usually on a track, and it's just, they'll set up, blockades or whatever they need to set up to make it work. Mm-hmm. But it's definitely a series of one big entry. The initial entry is going to be the biggest, like, smoke show, longest, hardest drift, and then everything else is just like transition and mostly technique and technical areas, and then maybe one long one at the end.
Yeah.
But it's definitely a bunch of transitions, because that's how you base the competition. You have to like see the apex of the drift and then the clipping point.
Mm-hmm. And is there always, I always see that they want to get what seems like incredibly close to an object, a wall, typically, something like that.
Yep.
In the one that I saw today, they were using barrels and that kind of stuff.
Okay.
So is there
most of the time it's a jersey barrier?
Yeah. It seemed
nuts.
like jersey barrier, right? And they're trying to get the tail of the car. Is there points for as close as you can get?
Oh, absolutely.
You get more points for that?
Yep.
Okay.
And that's all going to be lumped into the style.
Oh, okay.
Factor. I mean, and obviously you don't want a wall tap, but if you just skim it, like you're probably not going to lose any points for it.
Okay.
But
you don't hit it too, or you don't lose a bumper.
if you slam it, obviously
Gotcha.
you can call that run a loss.
I gotcha. Okay.
But as long as you keep your line, as long as your car keeps the line, and you don't, scrub, we call it, when you scrub in. Like if you're like heading to the wall and you just slam and you just yank your e-brake, so you scrub, which means like get away from it.
Oh, gotcha.
And it breaks the line or it breaks the flow. That's where you're going to lose points.
I see.
If you're on throttle and you stay on your line, like you're going to get points.
Yeah. All right. James, I don't want to leave you out of the conversation here. I think that you had some specific questions maybe about scoring and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it was around the scoring, which you've touched on, and you talk about, coming in and getting close to the wall. I've noticed, and they did this at LS Fest too, but in some of the events, like they're painting a box like right there near the wall.
Yeah.
And I assume that's kind of, you want to make sure you're in between, from that box to the wall, obviously getting as close as you can. But if you're, say, if your line brings you in front, is that not optimal, I assume? Or I guess if you were doing that, you might not even make the apex of the turn. But.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that's exactly what that box is for. It's basically like it's an entry line. That is a clipping point, essentially. It's just a painted one, but that's like where you want, you want to see the car in that area before it goes into the corner. And so it's still a clipping point.
Okay.
Because, if it was a physical item, it would still be something you want to get away from. So but you'd want to be in that little zone, essentially.
Right.
But you see that a lot in Formula Drift too. They do that a ton. They'll paint a box, which is basically like if you can see when a car comes into it, like how the rest of the lines is gonna follow from there. Yeah.
It's kind of crazy to me, some of the distances I've seen guys hold a drift. How on earth? I mean, I don't understand the mechanics of what you got going on in the car with the drift brake and this and that. I don't know what those do necessarily.
Yeah.
But yeah, how do they hold a drift for so long?
I mean, speed, technique, and power. Yeah. I mean, most of these Formula Drift cars are putting out, on the bottom side now, it's like 5 or 6, and then a lot of them are up to like 8 or 9. They're just big power cars with a ton of tire, and a ton of angle. So when you have a ton of tire and a bunch of power, like you're gonna drift fast. Like your car's gonna go fast, so you can cover a big distance much easier than, let's say, like a like a 200 horsepower car with pizza cutters on it, like, 205s. Like you can still do it, but you have to have a lot more speed. And, it's not going to be the smoke show that you see in pro and pro-am drifting. When you have, a 305 on the rear and 600 horsepower, your car is always you're going to drive faster. The car is going to go faster. So you're able to cover long corners.
Sure. So that was kind of leading you into that, right? The long corners. How do you keep from building too much speed? I mean, is one of your handbrakes for that? Is that
yeah? I mean, yeah, you can scrub speed with a handbrake.
Okay.
You can, if you're in competition, you generally just want to. I mean, you're going to be using your handbrake all the time, and that's to correct. Especially if you're chasing a car.
Is your handbrake for the front or
for the rear? Yeah, it's just
for the rear.
Yeah, most. Okay. I mean, like my car has a dedicated rear dual caliper setup in the rear. Most cars are using dedicated rear setups. I mean, a lot of the grassroots guys use a inline, we call it, which is just like a T tap into the rears.
Okay.
It works. And a lot of guys make it work, but it's just not as pronounced and
not as precise.
It's
maybe.
not, and it's. I know a lot of guys are going to hate me for saying that, but it doesn't work as good. And I've had both. Mm-hmm. My experience has been, dedicated rear caliper setup is the way to go.
Yeah.
And you can scrub with it. Like I was telling you earlier, you can cut in a little bit. If you're chasing a car, if you're too close, you can cut with it. Or if you're oversteering in a really tight corner, you can use it to stop, essentially not stop, but
stop the
reduce
rotation,
the
maybe.
oversteer and kind of correct out of that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's basically you can be on throttle and use it, right?
Okay.
So it's minute little changes instead of letting off throttle or, to brake.
Scrubbing a little bit.
Yeah, you can just stay on throttle and be right there. So
Okay.
it's really useful. And rally guys use it too, So it's that is one big thing that is used as a handbrake, but also throttle control. I mean, that's how you're going to keep speed.
Yeah.
And then technique of entry. So a lot of guys use handbrake to enter into the corner. I personally just grew up not doing that because I grew up in low power cars. And so I would flick the car or feint. Mm-hmm. And, you kind of do a little pre-turn and then
the big swap.
Right. And then the big chuck.
Yep.
And that generally allows you to have more speed, more mass. The car itself is going to be pushing harder into the area you throw it.
Yeah.
It's not like you mimicked it to do something. You can use your throttle all day. You don't have to use as much handbrake to control it from there.
Gotcha. What do you think, James?
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
No, that's fascinating for sure. The more I've thought about it, and I've got some other questions around the car setup in general, but
yeah.
I guess from the outside looking in, it's you can definitely tell there's a lot of throttle control going on, but coming from a lot of drag racing, watching guys drifting and all the things you've got to be thinking about and adjusting for at any point in time. And then when you're doing tandem, it's what's the other guy doing too?
Yes.
And trying to stay that close is, it's pretty impressive to me for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, I'll speak for most drifters here. It's the more comfortable you get with the car, especially with the setup. And if you practice, I mean, you get it becomes second nature of the tech, how you can scrub with the handbrake, how you flick it in, all that stuff. So by the time you do get in a tandem, and I'm not saying I'm some badass tandem driver, but I can keep up with my buddies and we try to have fun with it, but it doesn't really affect you as much as you think it would. You're watching them, right? And then all your technique and stuff, it's becomes second nature almost. It's hard to explain, but that's the basics of it. It doesn't affect you as much. You wouldn't think you're not playing a drum set.
Right.
It just becomes
right.
easy to read off the guy.
What, James, what things did you have mechanically that you were thinking of? Because I was going to go there next as well, but I'll let you lead it off.
Yeah, I mean, looking at those cars, right, and there's one that was at Ellis Fest. I didn't see him this year. He may have been there before I made it over there and took pictures. There was a Bandit style Trans Am that was out there drifting, and when you look at obviously how they've got the front tires cut, I mean they're not 90 degrees, but the front suspension to me obviously is vastly different than anything that I've ever looked at in person. But how do you, I mean, obviously you're cutting the front end up a little bit to be able to get that amount of turn in the front wheels, but how do you go about setting the front suspension up to be able to handle that amount of angle?
Well, I mean, it depends on the chassis and it depends on the style of suspension, double wishbone or McPherson. But generally, you want to widen the track width. I mean, most of these badass aftermarket kits you're seeing they widen the track width substantially That way you don't run into your, tie rods and stuff like that. If you widen the track width and you put larger, lower control arms on it, you're going to have more room to do all that stuff. And steering knuckles, that's the biggest one. I mean, and roll center adjustment. If you have, longer steering knuckles or knuckles that reduce the Ackerman of steering, and Ackerman, for people that don't know, it's the angle at which your car is steered from the tie rods. So if you have bigger knuckles with low Ackerman or zero Ackerman, the best way to that'll increase your angle for sure, but you have to account for, where your control arms are going to be and stuff like that. The easiest way to do it is to widen that whole setup. So most of the cars you're seeing out there, like I'm sure that Trans Am, that has like a McPherson style, I'm sure of it. So it's a pretty basic setup. They call them chop knuckles. You just chop them and weld them, extend them, and you can get a ton of angle out of pretty much any car with a McPherson style setup. But double wishbone's better. I mean, it's limitless essentially. Like there's companies out here making crazy front suspension setups that'll get you ungodly amounts of angle, but you're going to widen your track width, and it's going to be substantial. Another thing you'll see with a lot of drift cars is the massive amount of negative camber in the front. And the reason why that is because when you go to full lock, we call it, right? When you have full angle, because of the suspension design on any car, is when you turn your wheels all the way, your camber changes, right? Your camber is going to go flatter, or it's going to go more negative, or positive rather. It's going to go positive. So if you start with a negative camber and you turn your wheels maximum angle, you're going to sit flatter. Your front wheels are going to sit with the maximum amount of traction. And so that's why we all do that. My car is the same way.
And I guess that was part of my question, or maybe the next part was how you keep traction on the front. It just seems to me you would, like you were talking about, oversteer often, or at least if I was driving one, I probably would.
Yeah, you'd loop it. We all do.
Yeah.
It's hard to get used to. But yeah, I mean, so you set it up like, it's not set up for straight lines. So when you see it in a straight line, it's got that heavy negative camber. Well, when you're in full lock or drift, you're getting the maximum amount of traction in the front. And that's why you have all that negative camber, is to compensate for that, that change when you turn your wheels. So if you have negative camber and wider track width, you're going to have more angle, and you're going to have more traction on the front, and you're going to have more control.
Is it even possible? I mean, just in some of the searching that I was doing, is it possible? Do people have front wheel drive drift cars? Is that a thing?
People have been doing it over the years just for fun. Like I know, like I've seen a bunch of videos out of Japan. I mean, it's possible, but like most people will tell you, it's not really drifting.
Is it sliding?
Yeah, it's just like power sliding. I mean, you're just, or like, they call it like tail dragging. Like it's all handbrake. It's just, you're on your handbrake. You're
literally just, dragging the back of the car around.
Yeah. And it's like like I was talking about earlier with the flick, like if you flick a front wheel drive car and you huck the end of that body out there,
right,
and you just hammer throttle, you're going to drag it, and it's going to look like a drift
for a little bit.
Yeah. And it's not high speed stuff. Like you can't keep up, you can't do a freaking 30-degree sweep for 400 yards.
Yeah. Seems kind of, I don't know.
But you can slide them.
Yeah, you can slide it. But yeah, I can see how the car is just going to, it's going to correct.
But to answer your question, no, front wheel drive cannot drift.
Not really a thing.
all wheel can.
All wheel can? Okay, that was my next question. So it's pretty legit at drifting?
Oh yeah, I mean it's rare because you have to have so much power.
Okay.
I remember at an event I did in Colorado at IMI, which is a really cool grassroots drift track, and it's a kart track too. It's kind of like what we had here at Park.
Yeah.
It's a great track. They're still open, but this guy showed up with a absolutely insane Audi that had like 1,000 horsepower.
Oh wow!
And just 4-wheel smoke all day, just killing it.
Yeah.
But and they haul ass because of how much traction they get,
Yeah.
So you're going to see tons of tire smoke, and you have to be a really badass driver to do it. And you're eating up tires. Like, I don't know how you could afford that.
Oh, well, yeah.
I just don't get it.
You're doing the 4.
It looks sick, though.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, all the Gymkhana, like all the Ken Block videos, those are all-wheel drive. Like it's definitely possible.
That's true. Yeah. I hadn't even thought of that.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, and that car had like 1,000 horsepower or something.
Oh, he had many cars like that, yeah.
Yeah. I'm thinking of like the Unicorn, the Mustang based.
Yeah, that was all-wheel. I mean, he had that Fiesta that was sick.
Right.
He had a bunch of cars that were all-wheel drive, and you can drift the hell out of them.
Okay.
But just most people don't, on a grassroots level, and definitely not in professional level.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense, right? You wouldn't want to have all-wheel because it's going to be expensive for tires. And
Gotcha. All right. Yeah, and we've turbo, naturally aspirated.
I was a turbo guy for years.
Yeah.
I honestly thought that my skill level was never what it was. I mean, it's all personal preference. Like, I have so many friends that are like 100% turbo, inline 6, Japanese motors only. That's their thing.
Yeah.
And I get it. Like, I was that way for a long time, but for me, like, I'm a V8 guy. My style is just more, I like instant torque.
Well, what about a V8 with a turbo?
That'd be cool, but you still get some lag.
Yeah.
And I don't like lag. And I don't
need... A lot
need...
harder to control.
Way harder to control. And if I was a pro, I mean, a lot of the pros are running, boosted V8s. Most of them are supercharged. But, it's all about what do you like? What's your preference for driving style?
Yeah.
Because for me, it's like instant torque, naturally aspirated, 400, little over 400 horsepower is just perfect.
Yeah,
for me,
you can feel everything. You know where it's coming from. Yep. So, James, as a comparison per se, you're a drag race guy for the most part, I believe. Naturally aspirated, turbos, superchargers. Like, how much of that stuff is used in drag racing?
I mean, a little bit of all it. I got a lot of friends that are nitrous guys that are they're converting over to turbos.
Okay.
I think with the rise of Cletus McFarlane and all that, like a lot of those guys, they're turbo guys, and most of the folks that I know that are racing are all going turbo these days.
Gotcha.
I'm still running naturally aspirated. I'm sort of just like trying to push to see how far I can go on this iron 6.0 before I do anything else to it.
Yeah.
But I think ultimately, like, if I end up doing any type of power adder,
Oh, we lost you. You broke up just a little bit. You broke up a little bit there. So if you do a power adder, what are you going to do?
For me, I'll probably do a turbo. I mean, they sound cool and they look cool, and probably cheaper than going with a supercharger. So.
Yeah, probably. And I don't know, for drag racing, you're in the power all the time. You're not waiting for it, really, right? So,
yep.
Yeah, and it's a cheaper option.
Yeah.
It's like supercharger setups are definitely pricier, but turbos do look cool and they sound good.
It would be cool, but when you got kids, it's like, okay, I can buy the VS Racing Turbo and get a kit and weld up some stock manifolds and just make some power,
Yeah, flip stock manifolds and make it all work. If you have a halfway mechanical set of hands, it's pretty easy to do nowadays.
Yeah.
Especially on an LS.
Right.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Did that kind of...
I never thought about the turbo lag kind of coming in and affecting you, on like a drift run, right? And how that would really make a difference. And but that does kind of bring into question, like we talked about the no prep events and the drag and drives, and how there's a lot of things with that and drag racing that are sort of equalizers. So a guy who maybe doesn't have the 1,000 horsepower car can still come out and compete and potentially be fighting for first place, even if they didn't expect to be. So I guess my question would be, in a drift event, if you're, one of those guys with 600 horsepower and you're doing a tandem with a guy that's got 1,000, like, is the style and all those other things and technique, is that an equalizer that means that you could go out, even if you don't have, $30,000 under the hood and still compete and potentially win an event?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. We see it in the Formula Drift a lot. I mean, there's been, this season, it's ongoing. It's almost over. But this season, we've seen a lot of drivers come out that, shocked people that were like, they weren't the highest horsepower cars, but honestly, the difference between 600 and 1,000 anymore is negligible. It's all about how, control of your car in drift, because you're just burning tire,
Mm-hmm.
There is some difference, but overall, it's definitely car control and how comfortable you are with the car. Yes, you can definitely win a competition on the lower end of the horsepower spectrum. But that being said, is tandeming, especially when you're chasing and you're lower horsepower, it's going to be harder to keep up. I mean, obviously.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Because they have more torque, instant torque. And if it's boosted, is it turbo? Is there lag? Those things are all...
If you fall off a little bit, that turbo lag can really hurt you trying to catch back up.
Definitely.
If you can even get there.
Yes. I mean, it's not... Especially with the V8 turbo, it's different. Like, because, you still have that instant torque.
Yeah.
But when it comes on, you better be ready for it, because it's totally different. And and the throttle control is different, because if you let off, right, it's gonna dip and boost again.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just... But to answer your question, yes, it's definitely possible to win competition on a professional or pro-am level with the lower end of horsepower. Absolutely.
Gotcha. Yeah. Interesting.
There's a competition in Europe that's really, really good. They are called Drift Masters Grand Prix, or Drift Masters European Championship. And they are definitely the most exciting to watch.
Okay.
And the reason why is because the layouts are way better. It's not all about just smoke and,
so they're more
smoke and wall rides. It's more about like technique,
yeah.
high speed entries. There's some big corners.
Where
and then going right into chicanes and stuff like that.
In Europe, where do they hold those events? Do they have specific tracks for those? Because I feel like out here we don't.
Yeah, I mean, like I was saying, there's some staples in the U.S. We got Atlanta, which has always been a big Formula Drift city.
Okay.
Seattle at Evergreen Speedway, which is a great track, but it's a big banked track with walls and and then you got Long Beach, which is a street circuit, and then there's a bunch of there's a few other ones. There's like Austin, Texas does one.
Okay.
At what's it called? The Circuit of Americas or whatever. Coda, yep. And so when you get into the Drift Masters stuff, like it's pretty much all track. They do one in Warsaw. They do one in Sweden. They do one in Germany.
So it's kind of all over the...
Oh, it's a big layout, yeah. Okay. And there's like, Russia. There's like two or three in Russia per season.
Yeah. And these are the world competition guys. These are not just...
Yeah, and you'll see a lot of drivers from Formula Drift over there too.
Gotcha. Okay.
It's definitely more exciting. They're way more into it over there than here. Mm-hmm. It's not so commercialized.
Yep.
It's more like it's a perfect blend of like the grassroots style and like, actual like pro drifting and
interesting.
Still tons of smoke.
Sure.
Still crazy runs. There's still the styles based on the same type of things.
Yeah.
Apex, clipping point, speed, angle.
Yeah.
And then chase car, door to door type of thing.
So here's a question about the tandem runs, right? Who gets to go out in front and who's in reverse? And is that based on your previous runs and scores and that kind of stuff?
No, generally you're going to have head to head. So you're going to drift against a car. Mm-hmm. And yes, based on your points, you're going to get the first lead run.
Okay.
But you will always have to chase
at some point.
Yeah, that same car.
Oh, same. So you reverse.
Yeah. You have to chase.
Prove that you can do both sides.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
And the runs are based on that. Like, you'll get a lead run and he'll get a lead run. Uh-huh. And that's a round.
And then and that's a round. You're scored individually and then the scores are combined or averaged?
Yes, you're scored individually and then you're, as a lead car.
Yeah.
And then you're scored as a chase car.
Right.
And then based on that, out of the two guys or two women, that's going to be the thing. Right?
Gotcha. That's the overall. And that's that's one round. How many rounds do you get?
Oh, there's a lot. I mean, they start at I think 48 cars or something that qualify.
Okay.
And so you
Gosh,
go.
do you have to race everybody? Like elimination style?
Yeah, I mean, it's not quite like that. Like, no. So you'll have like in the first heat, like you'll head to head with somebody, and then if they lose, they get knocked out, and then you move on, and you have to do it with somebody else.
So it is elimination style.
It's elimination style.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
Generally.
Yeah. No, that sounds cool as shit.
And then with the more like what we call Matsuris, which is like a team event.
Mm-hmm.
Like you go out there with 4 of your cars, like in a team, and so you guys all tandem, or it's like a train.
Okay.
And they base your team of style, like all the cars, and then you get eliminated from there.
Oh wow!
And that's like
I don't know that I've ever seen one with more than 2. I'm gonna have to go look that up.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
A good one to check out is Final Bout. Final Bout is a U.S. based competition. It is a competition, but it's more like grassroots, laid back. But it's like invite only.
Oh wow!
It's only teams. There's no. I mean, it's not just tandem. It's not head to head. It's not like point system. I mean, it is point system, but it's not like.
Yeah, it's only teams.
Right, it's teams. And so you show up, and then they base it on style of your cars and like livery and like how the
so
cars
they have
look.
a D&E section.
Oh yeah.
Oh.
I mean, seriously, like you gotta
Optima. Here we go.
like how you gotta look. You gotta look good together. And
yeah. Okay.
So that's really popular too, and that's popular in Japan. Very popular.
Yeah, I can see that.
So, yeah, I mean, there's all kinds, but as far as professional and like all these, championships.
Yeah. I'm definitely learning something. How about you, James?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, a ton.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. It's a really, really cool motorsport.
It's a lot deeper than, like, if you're not well versed in it, if you don't watch it a lot, there's a lot to know.
There is.
I had no idea. I see, like I said, I see it on social and that kind of stuff, and watch these guys drift around, and I don't know what they're doing or what the intent is or how the scores or anything like that. So much more than you can see on the surface.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. And
like
that
racing, that guy's in first. He's going to win, right?
Right. And everybody's like, well, are you even racing? It's like, no, you're not. But it doesn't mean we're not competing.
Right.
Not only that, but like the very bottom line of drifting is like, even when we're out there just doing a grassroots event alone or just with our buddy for fun tandeming, you're besting yourself, You're
challenging yourself.
Yeah, you want to have that perfect run where you link up every corner and you don't, you don't drop tire and like, you keep it on track and you keep a good pace and you link every corner, you don't loop it. Like we're all chasing that exact lap.
Yeah.
Depending, on any track.
Yeah.
Like, I can speak for most drifters out there. I'm sure that when I see a car go out there with poise, speed, precision, and they can link the entire track without fucking up.
Yeah.
That is what I want to see. That's just as entertaining to me as some head-to-head battle.
Well, and for you, especially watching others drive or even just watching an event, it's probably because you're more in tune to what they're trying to do than a random spectator, sitting in the sand. We're watching the smoke and maybe we'll learn if we're in tune enough to figure out what they're doing. But for you, like, when they've had a really good run, you could pick it apart.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. Like I was saying, like if you go into a tight corner, like a hairpin, and you go super wide and it takes you forever, like, that's not the ideal. There. You need to have a balance, Yeah. You want to keep it tight, tons of smoke, and keep your speed, and like, something like that. Like there's a difference right there.
Yeah.
Most people would like to see it like super wide and tons of smoke, but it's like that. There's a balance to be had.
Yeah. They want to see that just for a big slide. It's like,
and it's cool.
Looks cool. Yeah.
It's cool, but like, as somebody who drifts a lot, like there's a balance.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that lends to something that I talked with a good friend of mine about recently, was that even down to like baseball, right? If you're a baseball guy, if you're somebody who's played the sport or followed the sport for a long time, you understand the strategies and the intricacies behind what they're doing. Same thing when you watch a NASCAR race, right? Like the fact that those guys, the way they set those cars up, and the fact that they're in the car for hours and just at almost full throttle for as long as Talladega was this last weekend, and just how long they're out there running and what they kind of go through. Or Formula One racers, right? You being somebody who does drift, you can appreciate everything about what they're doing versus a layman like me, or some of my friends that are drag racers that just like, I don't want to go watch those guys slide around the track. But when you really think about what has to go into making that perfect run, or running next to somebody, or just making a good one by yourself, it makes it that much more impressive if you know what goes into it.
Yeah, no, funny enough, I hear a lot of people like across all motorsports, they'll be like, oh, drifting's not a motorsport. You're not racing. You're not doing, it's like, I've heard that so many times throughout my life, it's like, okay, well, you just don't know about it. It sounds ignorant, really.
Yeah.
Because it is a motorsport. I mean, obviously we're going out to a track day. We're doing it, and then there is competitions and everything else. So of course it's a motorsport. I just feel like when people don't understand it, they think it's silly. They think it's just a waste of tires. They think it's a waste of thing.
Yeah.
When in reality is, if you understand it and get good at it, or just like what you guys are doing right now, listening to me talk about it and like getting a good perspective on it, I think most people would agree it's definitely, a cool motorsport.
Yeah.
It's different. Sure. That's the big thing. It's super different from any other motorsport in the sense that it is not a race, it's not a time thing.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, like any drifter that's like been doing it for a long time, I want to see a car drive fast.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to see you, drag tail around the whole track with just tons of smoke, taking your sweet time. Like, that's not exciting. Exciting is keeping speed and hauling ass and staying sideways.
The precision of it.
Yeah.
And
because it shows so much more skill when you can go through a corner fast and sideways.
Yeah. Exactly.
That's how you drift.
And you bring up a good point. Both of you do, actually, of the, James, you were saying drag racers don't understand it. And Ian, you're saying that, you hear that a lot, that it's not a motorsport. Well, prior to me even talking to you about it, Ian, I didn't understand it. Mm-hmm. I didn't hate it, but I didn't understand it. I didn't know how it was scored. I didn't understand, people were like, oh, do you drift? And I was like, no, man, I can't afford those tires. But I just didn't understand the whole concept. But now that I'm getting more of a background to it, I'm super intrigued. Yeah. Not that I want to drive it, but I definitely want to go see it. I want to experience it,
Yes, absolutely.
I don't know, man. I want to convert the Trans Am.
Do you?
There we go,
You're in?
Yes, James.
There you go. There you go.
I love this. This is what I want to hear. Yeah. And we're seeing.
But I will say,
go ahead, dude.
I just bought a set of tires just for some WS6 wheels, just so I've got some street tires instead of my drag pack, and I'm nauseated at the one set, so I don't know.
Right?
Yeah. Well,
I don't know about a sponsor.
That's another thing. It's like, a lot of guys do run, pretty expensive tires. I mean, there's a lot of like middle range tires, but I mean, I just grasped.
Is like,
there we go.
Go ahead, dude.
I was gonna say, I mean, like, what goes into selecting a good tire for drift, right? Like, you obviously don't want a slick. So,
no, you don't want a slick.
What are you looking for?
I mean, you want a softer tire if you want more smoke and grip, and that's the thing. A lot of people are like, "Wow, well, you don't want grip, right?" No, you do. A lot of people are like, "Well, why don't you just want the cheapest tires you can get, because all you're doing is burning them." Well, the reality is if you have a 480 treadwear all-season tire, it's going to be a freaking ice skate. And you're not going to have any control. But you also don't want, some crazy, track tire, because, I mean, some guys do run them, like especially the pro cars.
Yeah.
Well, one, they're going to be gone in seconds, right? So you do want some resistance there, but it's just, there's a point of too much grip. So based on the car's setup, you need to find that happy medium of, based on how big a tire you're running, how much power you're running, where you want the treadwear rating to be or grip to be. And it's completely based on power level, car setup, all of that.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like, I'm running like middle of the road, like still a really grippier tire. But, and it's trial and error too. We use a lot of guys get cheapo tires and try them out, and we just kind of talk about it, and we'll spread the word about them.
Good or not.
Good or not, or based on what power level. That's big. That's big.
Yeah.
Because on a low power car, you do want that high tread wear rating. You do want something that's going to
slip a little bit more.
Exactly.
So I know that
not driving fast.
Your tread wear number is kind of a shot in the dark.
It is.
Because everybody's tread wear is a little bit different. You've got 200 tread wear tires that I use a lot on our road course stuff.
And they're great, right?
I love them. Right?
Yeah, exactly. And because they have a ton of grip. And when you heat them up, they work.
They work, right. But for you, 200 is not great.
It's a little, not for my power, no.
Yeah. So, you'd burn it up. You'd melt it.
And that's another thing. They don't last as long,
Right. So, and you're saying 400 too much. So where are you at? I mean,
I'm at like a 320 right
now. Okay,
yeah.
320. But, and I understand that each brand of tire is going to react differently in same tread wear.
And that's the thing. We just try, it's trial and error, right? And none of these tires I'm buying, Kenda makes a couple tires that are like drift, focused.
Specific, yeah.
Yeah. And they're somewhere in there. They're like 280 to 340.
Okay. Yeah. How about you, James? I mean, I know drag tires they're going to be on the sticky end and probably softer compounds or softer sidewalls. Mm-hmm. What kind of, maybe you don't even measure it in tread wear. What do you look for?
Yeah, I mean, mine are just Mickey Thompson, DT Street drag radials that are on my car. I mean, pretty standard. Yeah. For what I'm doing, I mean, I'm not running a slick, obviously, but and I'm really curious too with this power level because I bought a set of Nitto like NT 555s or something to just go on some street tires, have something to cruise around town in. And these cars, from the factory were really great handling cars. And so I'm really curious now that I've got the new engine and all this power now. But ever since I did it, I've had the drag pack on here. So I've got 4.5-inch wide front wheels. So I don't drive it I definitely don't drive aggressively in any corners or anything like that. But I'm curious once I get the new tires, how it's gonna do, and then how the torque's gonna do on the rear tires, and whether I'm gonna keep traction there. So I don't know. But to answer your question directly, I mean the sticky like drag radials have been what I've stuck with.
Yeah, makes sense.
Although I think Nitto does make a drag radial now. I haven't tried it.
Yeah. I know. Well, they make a pretty good range. I've had the Nitto 05 and then there's I don't know, is it 01 or 02, something like that. They're a friggin' noisy tire for autocross. Let me tell you that.
Well, so yeah, and
they don't stick that well.
Right. Yeah. So what, man, to each their own. I'm sure somebody loves those tires out there,
Yeah. It depends on their power and speed and all that, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. So tires for drifting, it's completely dependent on how the car's set up and power rating.
Yep.
Essentially.
Yeah, totally makes sense.
Yeah.
And I'm sure the weight of your car comes into play as well.
Yep.
So what kind of air pressures do you run in those?
Well,
good question.
If you're running low power car, and which I've ran most of my life, you want high pressure. Yeah. You just keep it tight, and it generally it's more
allows it to spin some.
Exactly. Yeah. So you get some slip. On a car like mine, like how it's set up currently, I like to run it, about 35, 40 PSI in the rear.
It's pretty high.
It's pretty high, but, the tire's rated for, 45. So I like to run it like 35.
Okay.
Just so I can get some more grip, and I'll mess with it too,
Yeah.
Like especially if temperature changes, because your tire also, when you heat it up, it's gonna increase. Yeah,
I was just gonna ask that. I mean, you're heating that tire up instantly, so you're gaining minimum 6 psi.
Correct. Yeah. So that's why I keep it about 35 in the rear, and then in the front, I generally I keep about same. Yeah. Generally.
Yeah.
And then when I heat cycle them or water soak them, I always triple check them, and then I'll put them back down to 35 or just shy under.
Do you ever check them right when you come off the track and see how much air has gone in?
Oh yeah,
how much?
Sometimes 10 psi depending on the heat.
Yeah,
like I drifted in Medford like 2 years ago, and it's a cool circuit. It's called Affinity Circuit. It's just a drift track. I think they do kart racing there too. I'm not sure, but it's basically just a drift track. There's a couple in the Northwest like that, and it was like 103 degrees that day.
Yeah,
and it was like invite only event. And that's the only reason I went down, because they were like filming it and I got a ton of cool footage for it. But it was so ridiculously hot.
Yeah.
And tires were just freaking delaminating and popping left and right. It was the hottest day I've ever drifted.
Really?
And I could tell that it was affecting everybody's tires.
Sure. Yeah.
Heat,
Do they get greasy, like even more slippery?
Yeah, and that's track conditions and stuff too, right? And like track surface.
Well, awesome you said that, because I was going to bring it up. What's, ideal surface and like the different stuff that you drift on from, I'm sure you hit concrete versus good asphalt versus
there's some
bad
there's
asphalt.
definitely some concrete around. Yeah, like up at Villains. Villains is it was a crowd-funded, owned by drifters track. It's my favorite track in the Northwest.
Yeah.
It's in Walla Walla, Washington. And shout out to those guys, because they're awesome. It's like they do weekend events. So they'll do a Matsuri style.
Yeah. I want to come out and check that out when they have an event. Hopefully it doesn't conflict with some of my other stuff.
We should, dude. We should definitely go next year.
Yeah.
They do 4 or 5 events a year, and they do like one invite only thing. But that place is magical. I mean, just the vibe, I mean, it's an old drag strip that they added onto, so they didn't have to rezone any property or like.
So cool.
Yeah, they did it right.
Yeah.
And then the whole.
This is.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
No, yeah. Go ahead, James.
I was going to say, this may be a bit, it's not exactly off topic, but what did you say the name of the track was? I'm very curious.
Villains Sports Land.
Yeah.
Okay.
You should check them out.
Look it up. I've just been curious about how, like, in today's day and age, we see tracks closing down left and right, especially drag strip.
Yeah.
And it's like, somebody buys them and they shut them down, and then, they're building neighborhoods around them, right?
Yep.
So, and I'm really curious, what it would take for new drag strips and new tracks in areas to open up, and the idea of sort of crowdfunding it by racers, and it's sort of racer owned is very interesting. I mean, I didn't even know that was a thing there with the drift track, so I'm very curious. I'm gonna have to look that up.
Yeah, you should. Like I said, they're called Villains. They own a company. They build drift parts, they build angle kits and all kinds of stuff for various chassis, but the place is called Villains Sports Land. And I've drifted a lot of places over the country, and that is definitely my favorite place to go. And the reason why is just not because of, I mean, the track's great, but the surface in some areas is pretty brutal. I'm sure they have worked on it since, but the vibe of it, the layout of the track, it's like a direct replica of another track in Japan. So that's kind of cool too, because size and everything, I think. Mm-hmm. But more so than that, they take safety very seriously. And, they do some serious safety checks on the cars, whereas some tracks don't do that.
Gotcha. Tech inspections.
Yeah, the tech is it's thorough.
Good.
Yeah, it was good. And they're great, just great guys who own it, who own the company that runs it.
Yeah. So, backing up just a little bit to surface, do you do different prep for different types of surfaces?
I mean, not me personally. I know some guys do, but I mean, let me put it this way: most drift tracks are pretty awful as far as surface.
Sure.
I was lucky enough to drift up at the Ridge.
Oh.
In Washington, which is an incredible track, and we were on track. No, they don't. They only did it a few times.
Yeah.
But, going down the corkscrew in my car sideways was absolutely surreal.
That was epic.
And the surface was perfect. It's like perfect tarmac.
Yeah.
So, like, that's what I want. That's what I want to drift on, because
ideal.
it's so much more predictable.
Yeah.
And you can feel and control your car, But, our most local spot to us, Rob, is right up in Toutle, Washington, Spirit Peaks Raceway. Great grassroots track. Great for beginners, great for testing out a car, because there is a wall there on one section, but mostly it's just tire edges, just stacked tires. So and it's wide, so it's really forgiving, but the surface is awful. So you're going to go through tons and tons of tires.
Awful in that it's super rough.
Yeah, it's rough.
Like really grabby.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It's just like unkempt, old tarmac.
Old tarmac coming apart a little bit here and there. Yeah. Yeah.
And drifting's not easy on a surface anyway.
No, it's not.
It's tons of heat, and it's tons of
the wheel spin.
It pulls
the surface apart, really.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm not complaining.
Right.
But and it's expected.
Yeah.
But it is a really good place to drive. But this, surface, but I tell you what, when I go up there, my tires last half as long as they did it when we used to drift at Park.
Gotcha.
Which is Pat's Acres Racing Complex, and rest in peace to our community up here because they don't allow drifting there anymore.
Right.
Because of sound. The county shut us down.
Too many homes nearby.
Yep.
Wow.
I do think car setup and tires and all that. I'm kind of techie that way. I like that kind of stuff.
I do too.
Figure it out.
I do too. I love playing with that stuff.
And actually, I want to ask about suspension setup too. Do you run coilover adjustables the whole bit?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, most of my modifications on my car are all suspension based.
Okay.
And also stiffening, chassis stiffening.
Oh yeah.
I have every brace you can imagine, whether it be like my whole rear subframe's been, I added gussets, and then every bolt-on stiffening arm. Basically, I just wanted to get the chassis as stiff as I possibly could.
Sure.
I mean, it is a monocoque chassis, so it's already pretty stiff inherently, but I have, rear lower control arms adjustable, rear upper control arms, coilovers with, pretty high spring rates. I have the biggest rear sway bar I could find.
Yeah.
And then in the front, it's the same thing. I didn't go quite as crazy. And also all poly bushings, like the highest are like 90As.
Right.
And in the front, it's a little different. I just have coilovers. I don't have any adjustable arms except for my lowers. And then I did, obviously, a big steering angle upgrade.
Sure.
So I did knuckles, zero Ackerman, and roll center adjusters.
Gotcha.
So I could correct the pivot angle when you slam the car. Right?
Gotcha.
Because if you slam it, your tie rods do this.
Right.
Or if everybody wants to see me, I'm just pointing my arms down into a V.
Down.
Where, and if you don't put roll center adjusters on, it stays like that, and your geometry is awful, and you'll bind. Whereas roll center adjusters bring the outside pivot to more of a flat look. It keeps your tie rods flat with your rack, your steering rack. So that's also very, very important.
Yeah.
Because if you just slam a car, get natural camber, and try to just do like welded knuckles or just make your own, and you don't adjust your roll center, you're going to bind up and you're going to have your rack's going to fall apart too.
Oh, gotcha.
It's just really hard on a rack.
Gotcha. Okay.
So the front's not as important for me because I have double wishbone, right? On the McPherson cars, like older style suspension cars, you have to have much more adjustability. Like you want adjustable camber, top hats. You definitely want roll center adjusters, preferably negative camber ones. And then, there's a few other things you can do.
So do you adjust those kind of things depending on what course you're going to?
No, not personally, no.
No.
I know some guys do, but no, I just run. I get a good alignment, and I have specs that friends have shown me, work, and then I've tried a bunch of alignment specs.
Yeah.
In my car right now, I run just a half a degree of toe in the rear, which would be a positive toe, and then zero camber, and zero everything. I just want it flat in the back so I can get as much grip as I can.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And that's the reason why I put all those adjustable arms on the back, is so like adjustable toe arms.
So you can find that perfect spot and keep it there.
Well, I want to keep it just flat.
Right.
And if you just lower one of these cars, which is an IS 300, you're not going to get it. You have to have all three adjustments, right? You have to have it's like a triangle, right? Just like it's geometry. So if I have zero, almost everything zero in the back, and then on the front, I want to run like 4 degrees of negative camber, 5 degrees, so I can, when I go full lock, I'm more flat. I get more traction.
Flat when it's turned, yeah.
And then I just go a little bit toe out again.
Gotcha.
So I can get more lead. So, when it's toe out, I can, and then caster's big too. If you run, I have adjustable caster arms too. I should have mentioned that in the front. And the reason why is because it's just, it basically feels like, it's like a shopping cart, right? Mm-hmm. Like if you have a shopping cart and you move the wheels back halfway down the cart, it's not going to feel as smooth. You're not going to be able to like go around the corner. It's going to feel like choppy. Well, if you put those wheels at the very, very end of that shopping cart, it just feels better, right?
Yeah.
Kind of.
Longer wheelbase.
Yeah, it's a longer wheelbase. You increase it best you can. And then as long as you have good geometry, like roll center and everything, it just feels better.
Sounds like a lot of work, James. You got a bunch to do to make that car ready to drift.
It can be.
I was about to say, I'm going to be making drag passes in 2 weeks, so we'll see how those go first.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, we see a lot more like Camaro F-body cars out there now.
Yeah.
We see them much more than we did 10 years ago.
Availability, and
just I think a lot of people like to be different.
Yeah.
And then there's people making parts for them now, like drift parts.
Sure.
So that's another thing.
Yeah.
But, we're seeing some cool stuff out there.
James, I don't know what your garage space looks like, but you might have to get a second car.
Well, I did Google this a few minutes ago. I was like, and I mean, it makes sense. I was like, well, why doesn't anybody do a truck? Because I've got an OBS sitting right out there that's got to get something done. But I mean, I figure center of gravity is probably pretty terrible on a truck unless you really lower it down.
I don't know.
I mean, you got to slam it.
But, you got to slam it.
But
that'd be sweet.
Most of the reason why people stay away from trucks is because of leaf spring, solid axle, rear suspension.
Yeah.
Solid axle is not really the problem. It's just leaf spring crap, because those aren't meant to go sideways.
True.
They're just not. A lot of these guys running trucks.
My favorite things.
Go ahead, dude.
Okay. I was going to say, one of my favorite things on Motor Trend TV is Carcass did a OBS, and the whole rear suspension had like coilovers or something. They like cut the center of the bed. They like came up through the bed, and I was like, that is super cool.
It's like a cantilever.
Never have the money or time to do it.
Yeah. I love when guys do stuff like that. And you can even do a more basic setup. You can do coilovers and like 4-link with a Panhard or a Watts link. Mm-hmm. And you see guys use those, and it works pretty good in drift. But a lot of guys, what they're doing is they'll take a different rear chassis or, subframe and put it into the truck.
Yeah.
So you get IRS.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the trucks you see out there that are staying competitive, whether it be in grassroots or, Pro-Am, it's always an IRS rear subframe setup welded in.
Oh, that's
9 times out of 10.
That's basically what I'm doing with my truck.
Yeah, exactly.
Pro street truck, basically.
Exactly, and that's the only way you can really make a race truck.
Yeah,
you got to make it a race car with the truck bed, with the truck body.
Basically, yeah.
But it's cool. My buddy Brandon Peja, he runs Missile Works out of Denver. I'll just shout out to him real quick. He's a master fabricator and builder, but he has an amazing Nissan hardbody pickup, like a D21.
Oh, that's cool.
And he did like full S13, like Nissan 240SX front and rear subframes.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And it's got a inline 6 Toyota motor, and it's nuts.
But
cool. It looks cool and it handles really good because it's basically a 240.
Yeah, with a truck body.
That's
cool. Yep, I think that's we're gonna make a project for you, James. We'll keep track. Dang it! Apologize to your wife for me.
For sure.
Yeah. I mean, we've talked a lot about suspension and setup and stuff, which always intrigues me. I don't know. Did I miss anything, James? Did you have any other side tangents that I might have missed on that?
No. I mean, I think we touched on the suspension, tires. He touched on brakes early on. That was one of the questions I had, was just, braking setups for drifting. And
yeah.
But as far as car setup, I think, definitely answered all the questions I had.
Yeah.
I'm sure I'll think of some later and I'll message you guys.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. I'm just kind of perusing some of my notes, but, and you talked a little bit about line choice and that kind of stuff. I mean, precision is key. Mm-hmm. And I know that we talked about this on a previous episode, just like how long it takes to build that up from ground zero, to
from zero,
practice.
It's difficult. Yeah. I mean, I feel like even when we talk about it, like drifting on track, like with respect to just driving on the street and knowing how to do a cookie, right? Like, if you're comfortable with doing that and you know how to do it and you can do it in a tight parking lot, like just that type of control is crucial to like where somebody's skill level is at when you first show up to a drift event.
I can do it.
Perfect. And I see people, it's like, if I could see a guy do a figure eight in a small parking lot, like, okay, you're going to do pretty good. Yeah. Like you're at least going to have a better edge than somebody that has no idea what the car is going to do when you go into oversteer.
You can see some control.
Yes, you have to have some level of control. If you have some level of control, it's going to be a lot better for you. I mean, you're going to be able to get out there, and on day one, you're going to loop the hell out of it. You're going to, but if you take it easy and, you don't take any big risks, don't huck it into a wall.
Yeah.
Just respect the wall and just, find your lines.
Yeah.
I mean, you can get pretty good. I mean, I've seen guys like my homie Thomas. He started on a simulator.
Okay.
He never had a car. He grew up on a simulator. Like a full sim, like wheel, shifter, pedal setup.
Yeah.
And he was using a set of Corso, which is a drift game. It's not really a drift game, but it's a track game. But most drifters use it as like a simulator. And he bought a car and came out and it translated nearly perfectly. Wow. And he's been sick ever since.
Wow. That's cool.
It is cool. And he's made mistakes, he's wall tapped and like we all do and looped it and hit other cars and all that stuff. But,
he got somewhat of a base before actually getting out there. Yeah.
So, but that was for his first season drifting. He was 10 times better than most people because he had so much experience on the sim.
That's crazy.
And it's translating to real life.
Mom and Dad, it does pay off.
It does.
Video games do pay off.
For a nerdy guy that loves video games and is in tech, I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. No, and that a lot of guys are using that. It's a cheat. It's like a driver mod. Well, you hear that?
Yeah.
Driver mod.
Driver mods.
Yeah, like
ran out of
off season.
That's what I do.
Spend a few $1,000s on a sim and
sit there on my sim, and it keeps my eye-hand coordination sharp.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so somebody that has a sim experience, or even somebody that, like I said, car control, they're going to come out and they're going to learn a lot that day, but they're going to have a better chance of linking a few corners.
Yeah, for sure.
And it does take some time. And another thing we have to consider with that whole idea is, are you keeping your car the same? Are you keeping did you set it up and leave it like that and just drive it? Mm-hmm. Or are you modifying it here and there? Are you doing stuff to change?
You need to be used to it.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, you got to be used to it. Yeah. And it's not something you can just get used to in a day.
Oh, yeah. You need to know how your car is going to react.
Correct.
And granted, you're going to make changes over time, and that's going to be another learning curve, but hopefully not too steep.
No, and that's another thing I recommend to people. Don't change everything all at once.
Oh, yeah. I like doing little incremental changes. I like to be able to know what the changes I've done, how they feel.
Right. My big last change is obviously I swapped the motor, and I did a bunch of rear suspension stuff, bigger tires, and like more power, and it's like, it feels different. It feels like a whole new car. Oh. So I really gotta put some time behind the wheel to get back to where I used to be.
Yeah.
But that's part of the game.
Part of the game.
Yeah. And it's fun, but I definitely noticed the difference when I drifted it just, in a lot or a street. Mm-hmm. I was like, oh wow.
Oh, this is different.
This is so much different, and I feel like it feels unfamiliar.
Oh, okay.
When you do some giant changes like that.
Yeah.
So I would recommend anybody learning to drift, keep your car the same for a whole season.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that translates into all the other motorsports too. I've talked to a lot of guys that are first time wanting to come out to autocross or, but they always tell me, oh, I want to do this to my car and that to my car. I'm just like, no, just bring it out and drive it so you know what the car will do and what you need to spend your time on.
Right.
Just come drive it.
And it's not going to make you a better driver.
Nobody wants to do that though.
No, they don't. No, and drifting's the same.
Yeah.
Everybody's like, oh, I need more power. I'm going to motor swap it. It's like, yeah, okay, go ahead. Mm-hmm. And then after you motor swap, you're going to want to do other things.
Yep.
And then you never get the seat time that's needed to actually become really, really good.
Yeah.
And then you'll see the kids that do put the seat time in and keep their cars relatively the same, and you see them get way, way better fast.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. I like that. I want to move on to judging, actually. Judges. Where do they get the judges? Who are they? Volunteers? Are they part of a sanction? How are they trained?
I mean, I think for Formula Drift, see, I'm not really 100% sure. I mean, as far as like how they're trained, but almost all of them are either previous pro drifters or, people. I mean, they're always involved in the industry and have been in the sport forever.
Yeah. Well, what about the grassroots level, though? Where do those guys come from?
It's basically the guys who throw the events.
Okay.
Like I know for Final Bout, it's like there's a handful of guys that like that they do it every time. Mm-hmm. They like run Final Bout. So when they do an event like the Special Stage Northwest, they used to do it at Park, and then they do one in Wisconsin, I believe, and then they do one down south in Texas somewhere. And I think it's just the same group of guys every single one. Yeah.
They put it on, they judge it, or at least have their panel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, they got a panel, and they've all been, in the sport and seen for years and years.
So they know they don't really need, quote unquote, trained. They know what they're looking for.
Yeah, and I think the same can be said for the Formula Drift stuff or like the Euro Grand Championship.
Yeah.
I know that all those guys have been doing it for a long time.
Right. Do you think judging or scoring, maybe more pointedly, has changed over time?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Back in the early 2000s, when drifting kind of first popped off in the U.S., there was D1, which was a very cool drift championship, and they still do it in Japan, but there was a D1 like U.S., and at that time, it wasn't big power. It wasn't 700-800 horsepower cars, all of them. Yeah. It wasn't like smoke show city. It was style based.
Gotcha.
And even Formula Drift in the beginning kind of was too. And over time, it's just become smoke.
Yeah.
Angle. It's just become more of like a.
It's a show.
Well, yeah, it's a show. It's entertainment. I get that, but like, it was really exciting to watch. You can watch the YouTube videos. You'll immediately see the difference in style.
Okay. Yeah.
And there was sub 200 horsepower cars. There was Corollas out there with 160 horsepower.
Nice.
Tandeming with 400 horsepower, Von Gittin Jr. in a GTO.
Sure.
So it was fun. It made it really fun to watch, and they were doing it. So
not just drifting as a sport itself has evolved, but so the scoring has evolved with it.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Yeah. So how they're doing it, they've had to adjust how they score it and that kind of stuff too, and what they're looking for. Yes,
and with higher horsepower and more angle,
you're
going to see things change.
Yeah, it makes sense.
I mean, like line and apex and cutting and clipping points haven't really changed.
Yeah,
that's not the thing. That's not the variable that's changed.
Yeah,
but angle, smoke, and style, like what they call style. I mean, that's up for debate.
Sure. So
that stuff's changed tremendously.
Yeah, that makes sense. Is there innovation in style too? Like somebody comes almost like freestyle motocross, right?
Exactly.
Somebody comes with a new trick and blows everybody's mind. Does that happen in drifting?
Oh yeah. I mean, in the past few years of Formula Drift, we've seen some really crazy drivers pop off. Adam LZ, he was a YouTube personality, and he's popped off and become very, very good. Chelsea DeNofa, who lives up by me, he ran a drift school at Park when they were allowing it. These are names that started as grassroots, and they've become like household names of the community.
Yeah.
And they're just both very, very talented. And yes, the styles change for sure, and like technique,
right? Is there
becomes
freestyle
more
drift?
popular? Yeah, I mean, there's like any grassroots, and like Park every year used to do this thing called Summer Jam, and it was thrown by a group of people, and they were good people. But you'd see pro cars come out, so you'd have 1,000 horsepower cars out on that little kart track.
Yeah.
And, you could see how they drive it. And then there's obviously any car in the world out there, but it was invite only for the first 2 days. And then the last day was kind of open. But yeah, I mean, style has definitely changed, and technique and innovation for sure.
Yeah. I guess the reason I ask about like a freestyle drift is because some of things that I've seen.
Well, like I like to like, let's look at skateboarding, right? Like I'm a big extreme sports guy in general, but I like skateboarding.
Yeah.
I like rollerblading. Like I like all that stuff. And skateboarding has become so much more technical and clean and like, flip trick in and out.
It's all about being clean.
Yeah. And clean. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what's happened with drifting.
Yeah.
The old style of this giant wide feint into a, just gnarly angle corner, that's kind of gone now. It's more like a fast.
Yeah.
Like a quick,
precise.
Yeah, it's precise. It's really just how precise can you get with it and keep the line great. Mm-hmm. And then as a chase car, how much can you mimic that? How close can you keep your car to that guy?
Gotcha.
And that's really, it's gotten way better.
It's like a game of horse.
Yes. Exactly.
I can do this. Can you do it?
Yeah.
Well,
and then you'll see guys overtaking one another. Like if they lose a line,
really?
Yeah, we've seen it a lot more in the last few years. Like they'll try to overtake you when you're leading.
Yeah.
And if you do, that's like a bitch slap.
No doubt.
That's like, oh shit, you fucked up, dude, and now watch me.
Oh my gosh.
It's pretty cool.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, the one thing I wanted to bring up, like freestyle. So I've seen these guys come in down a straightaway into a corner, like literally loop the car around backwards.
Yeah.
Sometimes do
you're talking about a backy.
Okay, sometimes a complete 360 and then drift through the corner. Like that's
They do that.
Awesome.
Yeah, so they do that at the grassroots events, like even the team tandem ones, like or like team events, like they'll do like the best entry competition.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And then they'll do a 360 entry competition.
Yeah.
So
fucking insane.
It is. Yeah, it's cool. Like I've seen
James, have you seen that? Have you seen him do that?
Yeah, I have. The whole time you were talking about the different thing, I'm like, I'm picturing it was recently I seen a Corvette come up and just
did a backy
360.
Oh, 360.
Yeah.
I mean, I personally like seeing backies better just because it's like, it's so hard. Like, especially if you can keep speed and like keep a sick line and throw a backy, which when I say backy, it's like basically your car's going backwards, your tires are smoking, you're keeping your line, and then you still correct it out
and come out perfectly. Yeah.
Yeah. You're just doing it's like a whip on a bike, right?
Sure. Yep.
It's just like a whip.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Well,
and then
the 360 to me is something too, because on occasion will do a good tank slapper on the track.
Sure.
And if I can get it all the way around so I can just keep going, that's my ideal.
Yeah, of course.
I've done it a couple of times and you feel like a Superman when you do it.
Oh yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah, no, I've never done a 360 entry competition. I've messed around with it. Like it's not my favorite. I just don't like being hucked around that much.
Yeah.
Now with backies, like the only way you can really do that well is if you have an absolute ungodly amount of angle. Like you have to have 90 degree or 40 degrees. Basically.
Yeah.
So you're going to need that crazy setup I was telling you guys about, like widen arm, widen track width, all that stuff. Like if you have that, like you can do some pretty crazy insane stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. That's nuts. It's super cool too. Like some of that stuff is really extreme.
It is.
It's pretty impressive.
And if you like throw your car right with the right amount of speed, like anybody can back you and correct out of it, but you have to have the right line. Mm-hmm. You don't have to have all the angle in the world.
Seems like you got to have a shit ton of power to do it too, because your tires are going forward while you're moving backwards. So you're just spinning.
Yeah. I mean, but it's also about like how you throw the car into it. Like how much speed did you come in with it? You don't need to necessarily have power. It's just all about control. Yeah. I mean, you'd be surprised. You'd see some low power cars that are able to do it.
They still do it. Oh, yeah. Wow. That's pretty nuts. I mean, I do love it though. Pretty damn cool.
Oh, it's sweet.
Yeah. I mean, we kind of I wanted to touch on the judging and the scoring and that kind of stuff. So kind of went through that. James, do you got anything else you were thinking of?
Yeah, I won't lie. We keep hitting on stuff and then I think of something else.
Yeah, do it.
On the judging perspective, how often do you see with your bigger names, right? Or like now, what T-Pain's into drifting, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's been a big thing. And we could go down the rabbit hole. Like he's got this huge sim setup. I just seen him post a video on that. He's got all these different simulators set up for drivers to come in and race. But how often do you see like from the scoring when you're talking about styling and scoring? Like, do you ever see a situation where maybe you felt like someone was judged, they were judged a little bit better simply because they're a bigger name or an influencer or that sort of thing versus, somebody who maybe did a better technical job?
I feel like that used to happen a lot more. Like I'd say around 2008 to 2012, that was more of a thing. Like there was big names. That was in like Monster was really starting to sponsor drifting. I mean, they always have, but like those when they like putting money into it, like big money. And you were starting to see the bigger names, manufacturers show up, right? Like Ford was showing up with RTR.
Yeah.
And Dodge was showing up, and, you know, Chevy was showing up with Von Gittin Jr. And it's like, that was a different time. That was like when it really started to pop off. And at that point, I think there was like, you know, bought and paid for judges. And now it's kind of gone back to where it used to be almost, where it's like, you're seeing a lot of these YouTube guys come in, and you're seeing the rappers like T-Pain come in. He's a grassroots guy, more or less, you know, but you're seeing more, it's a level playing field, and they're building these cars, and they're, you know, a lot of these guys aren't sponsored by these big names, but they're staying on the circuit and they're able to compete.
Yeah.
And they're making top 16, which is like, that's like the threshold. If you're making top 16 in a Formula Drift, like you're doing really good, dude. Like that is where you want to be.
Yeah. Is there money to be made for top 16?
Yes.
Like even if maybe top 20? Can you?
Top 16 is like the spot.
That's the spot. Yeah.
Yeah. Top 32, you know, they start at like 70 something or whatever it is. And then you eliminate them. But top 16 is like the last day, right?
Yeah.
It's like Sunday.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
So if you
made it through the elimination.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
exactly. So if you're making Sunday, you're killing it. And we're seeing a lot of, you know, smaller shops and smaller, you know, new cars make
I
that.
think that's super important. The
It is.
smaller shops and the independents getting involved. I mean, it's good for them too in a sport like this, where there's not a lot of manufacturer involvement. There's room for those guys to make a name, and be seen. Right. So I think that's super important.
And I feel
they're
like
they're
you know,
the ones that are going to help.
one of the
that
positive
sport
things
keep
of
going.
social media has been, like, you know, like influencers. I hate that word.
Right.
But like guys who have been, I like to consider it successful.
Yeah.
With YouTube channels and other things like that. Like they have some sort of reach, and it's benefited them on the track just for like, you know, money. At least keeps them in the game.
Keeps them in the game. Keeps them
and
going.
they can afford to do this, and then people can follow, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I feel like that's been a game changer too.
Yeah.
Social media
For every motorsport, really.
for motorsport, yeah. But drifting especially.
Yeah. So this question is kind of, I know this is your personal opinion, and that's fine. That's what I'm looking for. Where do you see the sport going?
Well, where I see it going is, I don't know. I feel like it's gone in a really, really good direction in the past few years. Since COVID, it's really, it's been awesome.
Yeah.
It's been awesome to watch. It's definitely gone back to more of its root style, like, you know, early 2000s, as far as different cars, not all NASCAR powered, you know, Chevy, you know, whatever, Corvettes or whatever. It's like, now you're seeing, you know, BMW E36 is back out there with, you know, decent amount of power, but still keeping up. And what I want to see is essentially more of that. I want to see, you know, what exactly I was just talking about. I want to see the smaller drivers, smaller shops get in there and compete and stay competitive and not get priced out.
Yeah.
And then, you know, not getting judged out, essentially. Because there was a time in drifting where it was really disappointing to watch. It was just like...
Too much bias?
Yeah, it was bias, and it was all expensive teams.
Yeah.
All expensive shops running these high horsepower cars, just smoke. That's all they cared about. And you know, they kind of pivoted away from that because most people were like, oh, this sucks. This is boring.
Oh, don't want to do it.
Yeah, we just didn't want to watch it.
Oh.
Or keep up with it because it was just like, it was just monotonous.
Yeah, gotcha.
So I think that the direction it's going is like more of the direction we've all wanted to see.
Is it healthy?
It's definitely healthy.
Yeah,
oh, yeah, it's
growing?
bigger than it's ever been.
Okay. Well, that's good.
Oh, it is. Yeah, and you're seeing a lot more grassroots people too, you know?
Yeah.
Like when I first started drifting, you know, they were doing tracks. PDX Drift was doing it at the turnaround at PIR at the end of the drag track. And they don't do that anymore. It's been a long time as far as I know.
Yeah.
But it was amazing.
Yeah.
It was all grassroots people, all kinds of cars, and it was a competition. Mm-hmm. It was an elimination head-to-head, and it was dope. I mean, and, you know, we were working on our cars in the parking lot. A lot of camaraderie. You know, that's like really what it's all about.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's good.
But now we're seeing it like these events like Villains and all the stuff down at Affinity Circuit and even Spirit Peaks. They're packed, dude. Sometimes they're hitting driver cap most of the time, and they'll add more, you know.
Oh, that's good.
It's great.
Yeah. Well, I think motorsport needs it, you know. Mm-hmm. You need another avenue for people to get out there and compete and have fun and keep it interesting. Keep it alive.
And push limits.
Yeah. For everything, for car builds, for projects, for people to be there, for competition, all of it.
I agree.
Yeah. Super good. James, you got anything else?
Well, I was just going to ask, do you have I think you touched on this, but like a favorite track that, well, I think you mentioned the Villains track was probably the best one that you've raced at. But, you know, I know I never heard of this place until I was at LS Fest talking to some of the photographers who had been there. There's like a drift mansion out in like Missouri somewhere. Have you heard of this? It's like an Airbnb that you can
it's an Airbnb, right? I think it's in Alabama or something. Yeah,
seen the social media on it.
It's in Alabama or Missouri. Yeah, I've definitely seen it. I've had friends go there. They say it's freaking awesome. I would love to do something like that someday. There's a handful of tracks that I would like to hit that I haven't hit. You know, I've stayed on the West Coast my whole drifting, you know, career, if you want to call it that. I'm just grassroots. I've never done any sort of like main competition, head-to-head price or a point bracket type of anything. I've watched my friends do it. I've helped them do it. There's Drift Colorado, which is like they do a circuit out there. I used to live in Denver, and I've done their open events, but I've never done like points. Yeah. I've just really never thought my car could hold up for a whole season, and you know, and I could stay competitive because it's so, you know, it's expensive, and you know, you got to work on your car.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I've always just done grassroots events, but Villains is definitely my favorite track in the Northwest.
They do.
Apple Speedway is pretty sick down out of Sacramento. I've drifted there once. Let me think here. Yeah, I mean, IMI, which is like another little, you know, it's a rinky-dink kart track, but it's wide enough and it's really fun. I just have a really good tie to that place. It feels really good. I practiced there. I learned how to like do bigger stuff there.
Okay.
Like third gear entries and learning how to, you know, flick the car. And so that's more of like a nostalgia thing.
Yeah.
But I drifted up at Evergreen. That's interesting. I'm not a huge fan of banked corners. I like a flat track.
Yeah. That takes a different driving style, I would imagine.
It does, yeah. And it's just, you know, it's different, yeah.
So along the same lines, is there a track, say, I guess worldwide, but more...
The Ridge was really good, too. I want to shout out the Ridge.
A track more in the United States that is on your bucket list?
Oh, yeah, I mean... Laguna Seca.
For drifting or just driving?
They just did a drift event last year, and I'm watching the footage, and I'm like, oh my God.
Okay.
Dude, it was nuts. You got to check it out.
Does it coincide with Optima?
I don't know what they were doing there. All I know it was an absolute free-for-all.
Oh, really?
Like, there was, like, pros driving around like AMs, like, overtaking them like high speed on track. I mean, you got to watch some of this, dude. It's nuts. There's some footage of, God, I can't remember his name, but he's got an amazing 240 with a big badass Ford V8, and he's literally doing like 100-mile-an-hour feint into the pre-corkscrew corner and then down the corkscrew. Like, just, it's insanity.
Yeah.
And I don't think, as far as I know, at least they've never done any type of event there like that.
Yeah. Huh. Interesting.
So that would be cool.
Yeah.
You know, just stuff like that. I like to see drifting on like really high-end tracks.
Sure.
It's just, of course, it's exciting.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, that's neat. Yep. And I guess part of the reason I ask is because you'd mentioned COTA, and they do a drift event there. Mm-hmm. And I think that coincides with the
Optima?
GTA. No, GTA.
Oh, GTA. Okay, yeah. Yeah, the COTA the Coda footage is incredible too, man. Like, I really like that track a lot. That would be really, really fun to drive.
Same. That's a bucket list track to me. I want to go drive GTA.
That's a good call.
Yep. So,
because I would love to drive there.
Yep.
And in pretty much any
it's not too far for you, James. You could make it to Coda.
Yeah, even that, like I was gonna say, if you guys do ever end up like at LS Fest in Texas or something, which that's not, you guys are more, you'd probably go to the West Coast one, but I can say if you ever end up, East Coast somewhere within, reasonable time frame from you, got a dedicated photographer.
Yeah.
Oh, that'd be sick.
Definitely show up. But
I'll take that.
Yeah,
I'll take you up on that offer.
I would like to see that.
Yeah. No doubt.
Yeah.
Well, I think we've done it. I think we covered everything I wanted to cover.
Yeah.
It's super great to have you here, Ian and James. Thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Of course, bro.
Yeah.
It's been fun.
Everybody.
Yeah, I appreciate the heck out of this. It was very informative.
I learned a lot tonight too, actually. And I know we've touched on drifting a little bit in our other shows, but this was a lot more in depth, and I appreciate that.
Of course.
Sure. It's really good. Everybody check out the High Octane Dads podcast.
It's very good.
It is great. Yep. I just finished the other episode, and I appreciate the shout outs. Really, really great. I was actually surprised. I was like, oh, damn, that's cool.
I know. I loved it too.
So I appreciate that, James. Everybody check that out. Hit follow, share it with your friends. And thanks for listening to Untitled Car Project Special Episode 1. Hopefully more to come. So, all right, guys. Really appreciate it.
See ya.
Thanks a lot.
You bet.